Did you know there's a powerful story structure used in thrillers and mysteries that's named after an 18th century German philosopher who almost certainly had nothing to do with it? Hey guys, if you're new here, my name's Jason, I'm the Nerdy Novelist, and I love digging into different story structures. And honestly, the weirder the origin, the more interested I get. And this structure that we're talking about today is the Fichtean curve. And despite its strange name, it's a simple and brutal way to build a story out of escalating crises. This video is part of my quest to document every major story structure, so let me know in the comments if there's a specific one you want to see me cover next. The Fichtean curve is a story structure built on a foundation of constant rising pressure. Instead of a slow build, it throws the reader and the protagonist directly into the fire. It's organized into three deceptively simple parts: an extended period of rising action, a late arriving climax, and a brief falling action. The key is that this structure isn't a smooth ramp, but a series of jagged peaks, each one higher than the last. The story begins with a problem and only gets worse from there. The first and largest part of the story, taking up roughly 2/3 of the narrative, is the rising action. This is where the Fichtean curve completely diverges from more traditional structures. There's no lengthy setup. You don't get pages establishing the hero's quiet life before the trouble starts. The story begins in medias res, in the middle of things. The inciting incident isn't really a future event, it's the event that has just happened or is happening really early in the story. The first crisis is already underway. For instance, in Andy Weir's The Martian, the story doesn't begin with Mark Watney training for his mission or enjoying the journey to Mars. It begins right as he's essentially left for dead. The first crisis is immediate: survival. And this approach grabs the reader and establishes momentum from the very first sentence. Any necessary backstory or world building is sort of woven into the action, and we learn about the characters not through what the narrator tells us, but by watching how they react under pressure. Also, this rising action isn't a single long climb, it's a sequence of escalating crises. Each crisis is a self-contained episode that presents a new challenge. The protagonists attempt to solve one problem directly, which causes the next, more complicated problem. This cause and effect chain is crucial. It's not just one bad thing happening after another, it's a domino effect of failure and then adaptation. When Mark Watney solves his food problem by growing potatoes, the airlock explosion that destroys his crops becomes the next, more desperate crisis, and each solution contains the seeds of the next disaster. Between these peaks of crisis, the structure allows for brief dips in tension. These are not long periods of rest. They are more like short scenes where the character can process what just happened, gather information, or simply breathe before the next wave hits. These moments prevent reader fatigue and allow for reflection, but they are deliberately kept short to maintain the story's relentless forward drive. But how this structure is used proves its flexibility. It's not limited to life or death survival stories. In a mystery like Gone Girl, the crises are revelations. The public suspects the husband, then his infidelity is exposed, then evidence of foul play piles up. Each new piece of information is a crisis that completely reframes the entire story for both the characters and the reader. This shows that a crisis can be a shocking discovery just as easily as a physical threat. By the way, if you'd like to learn more about how to use powerful frameworks like this alongside AI as an author-led productivity tool to help you write 12 or more books a year without compromising your creativity or ethics, check out the Story Hacker Gold group linked in the description. The second part of the curve, arriving much later in the story than in other structures, is the climax. After surviving a gauntlet of smaller crises, the protagonist faces the ultimate impasse. So this isn't just another problem, this is the point of no return, the one conflict that cannot be sidestepped or easily overcome. It's the final exam for every lesson learned during the rising action. The outcome of the climax, whether a triumph or a catastrophe, fundamentally and irreversibly changes the course of the story. The climax is distinguished from the earlier crises by its finality. The protagonist is forced to confront the central conflict head on. In a thriller, this is a face-to-face showdown with the antagonist. In a character-driven story, it might be a devastating personal revelation or a moral choice that shatters the protagonist's world. This leads to the final and shortest part of the story, the falling action. While other structures might dedicate significant time to wrapping everything up, the Fichtean curve's resolution is swift and to the point. This section deals with the immediate aftermath of the climax. It resolves the most pressing plot strands and establishes the new normal for the protagonist. What's interesting about this structure's approach to resolution is that it often avoids neat, tidy endings. Contemporary storytelling often leans into ambiguity, acknowledging that real life rarely provides complete closure. The falling action in a Fichtean narrative reflects this. It shows how the characters have been permanently altered, but it may leave some questions unanswered or some relationships in flux. The story concludes, but life goes on. This structure's efficiency and focus on momentum are precisely why it has become such a powerful tool, even if its origin is shrouded in a bit of academic mystery. So about that name. The Fichtean curve is named after, and I'm going to butcher this, I'm sorry, Johann Gottlieb Fichte, an 18th century German philosopher who was a key figure in German idealism. Fichte developed the philosophical framework of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, which describes how an idea, thesis, is challenged by an opposing idea, antithesis, and the conflict is resolved by a new higher idea, synthesis. You can see this conceptual parallel to the story structure. A crisis presents a challenge, the thesis, obstacles emerge, the antithesis, and the resolution propels the story toward the next crisis, the synthesis. It's a neat connection, but there's a problem. Experts on Johann Fichte are in general agreement that the philosopher himself had nothing to do with this storytelling concept. He never wrote about narrative theory. The name was actually coined by novelist and creative writing teacher John Gardner in his 1983 book, The Art of Fiction. Gardner likely drew conceptual inspiration from Fichte, or maybe he just thought the name sounded impressively scholarly. Either way, the grand philosophical name is attached to a structure he observed in the pacey, tension-filled pulp fiction and mystery magazines of the mid-20th century. Gardner didn't invent the structure. He identified, named, and formalized it. He recognized that certain stories achieved their relentless pace by hacking away the traditional, slow-moving exposition and starting with immediate conflict. By giving this intuitive practice a name and a visual diagram, he made it a teachable and reproducible tool for writers. To truly understand its power, it helps to see how the Fichtean curve stands apart from other popular story structures, and how it's similar as well. The most common framework, the three-act structure, dedicates its entire first act to setup. It carefully establishes the world, characters, and stakes before the real conflict begins, although there is often some conflict that one could argue in that first act, when done correctly, that would align itself with the Fichtean curve. But the Fichtean curve dispenses with setup entirely. It's the difference between a commercial flight with a long gradual takeoff and being launched off an aircraft carrier. The three-act structure builds tension on a smooth and steady incline, whereas the Fichtean curve generates tension in a series of shocking jolts. It also stands in stark contrast to Freytag's pyramid, a 5-act model developed in the 19th century that I've talked about in previous videos. Freytag's structure is symmetrical and balanced, with the climax sitting neatly at the midpoint. It gives equal weight to the rising and falling action. The Fichtean curve is a deliberate distortion of this. It's asymmetrical, with a long front-loaded rising action and a short, swift falling action. The climax is pushed far toward the end. If Freytag's pyramid is the model for classical tragedy, the Fichtean curve is its hyper-modern, impatient descendant, built for thrillers that need to maintain page-turning momentum. Finally, consider the hero's journey. This mythic structure, popularized by Joseph Campbell, is a 12-stage map for a character's internal transformation. It's about the journey of a spiritual and psychological growth. The Fichtean curve, while allowing for character development, is primarily concerned with navigating external crises. The hero's journey is a detailed roadmap. The Fichtean curve is more like a general directive. Survive this, then survive the next thing, which will be worse. Many stories blend elements of both, but their core focus is different. One prioritizes the internal journey of becoming, while the other prioritizes the external struggle for survival. Knowing these differences reveals why the Fichtean curve is so effective for certain kinds of stories. It's a tool precision engineered for tension, momentum, and crisis. If you want to go a little bit deeper into story structure and learn a complete step-by-step process for taking your book idea from a blank page to a finished manuscript in your reader's hands, I invite you to join my private community, Story Hacker Gold. Inside, you'll get access to my entire author system, including tools and strategies for marketing your book effectively. We also explore how to ethically use AI to enhance your creativity and productivity as a productivity tool and not replace it. The group includes weekly live calls with me, free copies of all my ebooks and audiobooks for authors, and a supportive community of writers working toward the same goals. The link is down in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.